Imagine this. You bury your loved ones, but every time you return to their resting place, something is wrong. The soil has shifted. The headstones have moved. And no matter how many times you try to separate the dead, their graves keep rejoining as if pulled together by invisible hands. Welcome to Issız Cuma Mezarlığı, Turkey's most cursed cemetery, where whispers of black magic and jinn still echo in the night. And trust me, after this story, you'll never walk through a graveyard the same way again. Deep in the province of Kanakal, hidden beyond the winding roads and quiet villages, lies an old graveyard that looks, at first glance, completely ordinary. Crooked headstones jut out of the ground. Grass and weeds have long swallowed the paths, and a heavy silence hangs in the air. It's the kind of place where the world feels paused, where the dead are left to their eternal slumber. Locals call it Issız Cuma Mezarlığı, the abandoned Friday cemetery. But behind the silence lies a truth so terrifying that villagers refuse to pass by after dark. Because this place, they say, isn't just a burial ground. It's a black magic hotspot, a stage where curses, rituals, and ghostly happenings have unfolded for generations. The legend begins decades ago with a tragedy that should be no more unusual than any other sad story of death. A woman died while giving birth. Her baby girl survived only a few hours before she too passed away. Grief-stricken, the family buried mother and child side by side. It was meant to be a symbol of eternal togetherness, mother and daughter united in death. But that's when the nightmare began. When the family returned to visit the graves, they noticed something was wrong. The earth had shifted. The borders of the graves had blurred. The two burial sites seemed to be pressing against each other, merging. At first, they thought it was an accident, a trick of time, weather, or soil. But then the gravestones themselves began to lean, tilting toward one another as though drawn by an unseen magnet. Disturbed, the family had the graves separated. But within weeks, the phenomenon returned. The soil pushing together, the markers shifting closer, the two resting places fusing again as if nothing could keep them apart. No matter how far they moved them, no matter how many times they tried, the dead refused to stay separated. And that was when the whispers began. Some villagers claimed this wasn't love at all, but something much darker. They believed the jinn had bound the two souls together, forcing them to share one cursed grave for eternity. Others muttered that the tragedy was a result of a black magic ritual gone wrong, that the soil of the cemetery itself had been poisoned by ancient curses. And then there were those who said the mother's spirit was restless, unable to let go of her child, dragging their grave together through sheer will from beyond the grave. Whatever the explanation, one truth echoed through the village. Issız Cuma was not a place for the living. As the years passed, the story only grew darker. Villagers began to report terrifying phenomena. Fires would erupt from the ground with no warning, flames licking up from the soil as though hell itself was cracking open beneath the graves. The fires spread so suddenly and unnaturally that people began avoiding the cemetery entirely. Visitors who braved the grounds at night spoke of unnatural screams echoing between the headstones, cries that seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere at once. Some swore they saw shadowy figures moving among the graves, long and thin, with eyes that glowed faintly in the dark before vanishing into the mist. The story went from a whispered local legend to a national headline when a live broadcast crew came to investigate. Armed with cameras and microphones, they expected to debunk the legend, to expose it as superstition. But when the sun set and the cameras rolled, something else happened. Strange noises cut through the air, sounds like whispers overlapping with screams. Equipment malfunctioned. Static filled their recordings. And then, without warning, a fire erupted across the soil, spreading so fast that the crew dropped their gear and fled in terror. Their broadcast was cut short, but the fear on their faces told the nation everything they needed to know. From that day on, Issız Cuma Mezarlığı became infamous. It was no longer just a village secret, but one of Turkey's most notorious haunted places. And yet, despite the warnings, the graveyard attracts thrill seekers to this day. Ghost hunters, black magic practitioners, and those who dare to tempt fate sneak in at night, leaving behind candles, charms, and strange offerings at the graves. Symbols are being carved into the soil, strange ritual performed under the moonlight, as if daring the cursed ground to respond. But the villagers have their own rule. They say if you ever find yourself inside Issız Cuma after dark, don't look back, because if you do, something might be waiting for you, something that doesn't want you to leave. So, What do you think? Was the merging of the mother and child's graves a symbol of eternal love, a mother clinging to her child even in death? Or was it something darker, black magic, curses, and gin-twisting reality itself? One thing certain, Issız Cuma Mezarlığı is not just a graveyard. It's a warning. And if you ever find yourself in Kanakal, walking near its gates as the wind howls and the moon fade behind clouds, remember this. Don't wander into the cemetery after dark. Unless, of course, you want to become part of its legend. And if you survived this story, you're one of us now. Hit subscribe before Annabelle's cousin in Turkey shows up at your door tonight. Trust me, you don't want that.